The VCT Americas Stage 1 2024 playoffs is just around the corner, and it's time to do my predictions and my pick'ems for the bracket. Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel, and today we are doing the VCT Americas playoff pick'ems and predictions. So this is the bracket as it stands right now. We have two matches in the knockout round, which means whichever teams lose this round get knocked out of the bracket immediately. It is not double elimination at the start, which I personally think is stupid. If you're gonna do double elimination literally just one match after this one, why not just do it for them? That just means Loud or 100 Thieves or G2 or C9 can just immediately get out, even though the other teams don't. They get the luxury of having it being double elim. Anyways, dumb format discussion aside, let's go through these matches, starting with C9 versus G2. So C9 had a record of 5-1 during the regular season split, and G2 had a record of 3-3, ending pretty much on a whimper, just barely scraping into playoffs after losing against Loud. They only made it in because they had two more round wins than Sentinels, which I do think is incredibly lucky. I really don't think G2 should be in this spot. I'm not saying that they're frauds. I do think this is a good team, but they absolutely benefited off of the fact that Energy and Sentinels had a really rough split. Whereas C9, they go through roster changes before this stage, and it ends up working in spades. Both Rooney and Moose have been good additions. Rooney especially having a very good stage 1. Oxy looks incredibly talented. Vanity is still showing his value as an IGL. So there is a lot to like about the C9 team, but at the same time, playoffs have kind of been rough for C9 basically since 2021. They haven't qualified for an international tournament aside from lock-ins since 2021, and every time it looks like they're about to do it, they tend to fall apart. So does that trend continue and G2 get the upset victory, or are they finally able to make a decent push for that qualification? Personally, I do kind of want to pick G2 for this one based off of that past history of C9 flopping and, G2, definitely being a bit up and down, maybe being underdogs. But overall, I do think C9 is going to take that. I think Oxy is just going to fry this team. I do think it ends up being closer than most people expect. It probably does go to a third map. C9 tend to lose their first map. They've only won one first map this entire split, but I do think that C9 have the ability to come out on top. Moving on to 100 Thieves versus Loud. Now, this game being single elimination is really rough for both teams, to be honest. 100 Thieves had a very good split after looking pretty mediocre at the beginning of the year, granted not having a lot of time with Boostio to really mesh with the group. Now we have seen the fruits of developing this team, giving them time, and they have looked quite good. They ended their split one with a 3-2 record, whereas Loud ended with a 2-3 record. Again, just barely scraping into playoffs after winning against G2. So Loud also having a bit of luck with other teams in the group not looking very good, whereas 100 Thieves definitely looked like one of the better teams within that group. So if you're just going based off of how the split went, you would probably say 100 Thieves. My thing is, I do find it pretty hard to count this Loud team out. They seem to have found their form after a really rough start to the split. They had the visa issues, which led to their loss against Energy, but then they weren't able to get a win for a number of weeks after that, despite having a 2-week break. So it seemed like maybe Loud were just kind of out of it at this point. But now that they've made it here, I do kind of find it hard to bet against them. Loud have shown time and time again that whenever you start to doubt them, that's kind of when they tend to prove you wrong. So while I do think on paper 100 Thieves is looking a lot better right now, I kind of think Loud's going to take this one, which honestly I don't really want to happen. Not that I dislike Loud, sorry Brazilian fans, but I do want 100 Thieves to go on a run. They've been an entertaining team to watch, and I do really like this group. But against a team like Loud, who have a ton of experience and are able to get themselves out of ruts, it just seems very hard. 100 Thieves, they definitely can take it if they do win this one. I'm not surprised. I'm not surprised about any of these teams winning in these first two knockout rounds, because it just seems like everybody's pretty close in terms of skill. Like, the worst team you can see out of these four is like G2, and even they're decent, so we'll see. So moving on to the upper semifinals, so when this bracket starts as double elimination, we have Crew versus C9. Crew have been on an incredible run during this split, going 5-1, only losing against Leviathan, but C9 also had the same exact record of them, 5-1, but they beat Leviathan, but that was the very first game of the split for both teams. So putting a lot of stock into that does seem a little bit unfair. Crew have looked really fantastic, but I do kind of question whether or not this team is truly ready for a big run and qualification for an international. It is really tough to get to that point, and we've seen teams like C9 who last year had a really good run during the regular season and then crashed and burned despite, I think they only needed the one win to make it to Tokyo that year, and they just kind of crashed. And it could happen for both of these teams. It is really hard to stay consistent, especially when teams are probably really preparing something good that they're cooking against you in playoffs. But at the same time, maybe all of the losing that Crew did last year really just brought this team up and gave them the skills and the experience they needed to know what it takes to win, because they definitely hate losing now. Going winless during the regular season last year and then doing that incredible run to make it to champions, but then losing in champions, it just feels like this team, they have experience in the way of, we don't want to be where we were last year, we really want to make this work. And I definitely think they can, and I do think Crew is going to take it. C9 go down to the lower bracket, and Crew qualify for Shanghai. Now moving on to Leviathan versus Loud. Now these two teams did face each other at kickoff. Loud did end up taking that one 2-1, I believe. And since then, Leviathan have looked much, much better than they did back then. So how do you really measure these two teams against one another? Leviathan had a much better split one in comparison to Loud. But as I talked about with them versus 100 Thieves, this team has a lot of experience and they've looked a lot better by the end of the regular season stage. And Leviathan have done a lot of winning this split. They haven't been humbled since that match against C9. And it seemed like that match was kind of what turned their season around, because they felt the embarrassment of losing that match, and then they were able to go on this incredible run. So are they able to turn that strong split into a qualification and potentially winning this playoffs? Or will Loud show up, have a counter for Aspas, who is on a heater right now? He's clearly the best player in the world. Or does Aspas just absolutely wipe the floor with his old team? It really could go either way. I know a lot of people are probably going to be picking Leviathan for this one, but personally, I'm going to pick Loud. I think that if there's any potential for an upset in these playoffs, I see it as Loud. And again, Loud, it's hard for me to see them not making it to an international this year. They've been to every international for the past 2-3 years. It's hard for me to see a world where they're not there yet again, even if they don't look like the same team they were in previous years. So I do think they qualify and they face Crew in the upper finals. Which brings us to the lower round one, C9 versus Leviathan. How do we see this one going? A rematch from the start of the split where, as I said, Leviathan got embarrassed by C9, and C9 showcased their basically newly formed roster and new form of Valorant, which is just very, as Bren likes to put from Plat Chat, very muddy. They like this chaotic mess. They usually start matches slow, but then they just grind out matches and grind the other team down and end up winning. So do they do that to Leviathan yet again, or is Leviathan much more prepared and much more motivated to get revenge against this team? Also, if C9 lose this match, that would mean that there would be no North American teams at Masters Shanghai, which I don't think that's ever happened in a Valorant tournament before. Obviously, before 2023, it wasn't possible for no North American teams to make it in because they always put at least 2 teams in there. But in this franchise league, it is possible for there to be just Latin American teams or just Brazilian teams making it in. But it hasn't happened yet, so does it happen here? And as a North American, it does kind of pain me to say it, but I don't really think C9 can win this one yet again. I think Leviathan takes it. I think they qualify for Masters Shanghai, albeit in a not so dominant fashion. It's just hard to see Aspas not qualifying for Shanghai. This man is on an absolute heater, and it would be an absolute joy to see him at Shanghai. And I think if no one else performs, he's going to just drag this team there. All right, so moving on to the upper final, Crew versus Loud. So this matchup hasn't happened yet this year. And despite everything that I've said about Loud during this video so far, I don't think they have the ability to win this playoffs. I do think they have the ability to qualify for Shanghai, but I am picking Crew to go to the upper final, which would mean Loud versus Leviathan, and I think we go back and forth on this matchup and Leviathan ends up winning it, which would mean in the grand final, which is only important for championship points, I do think that Leviathan win this one yet again. So for my bracket, they lose to Loud early, and then they crawl their way back and end up winning the playoffs. I definitely see that as a possible thing. When a team is winning as much as they have been doing, they can tend to lose sight of what it's like to lose, and the pressure can definitely get to them. But I think this team is ready to go on a run, but I do think they start the tournament by getting a little bit humbled by Loud, but then making it away and ended up being Crew. I think Crew is very good. I think Crew can beat them, but after seeing what I saw against with these two teams facing each other at the end of the split, I do think in a 1v1 matchup, Leviathan just has the advantage. So we'll see how it goes. I could see Crew winning it, but Crew just being here is that's just a joy for fans of this team, because this team was in such a rut in 2023, and early on in 2024 it looked like that might happen again. So very glad to see them recover. It's good that they're even in playoffs in the position they're in. So for Crew fans, if my bracket ends up being Ron and they bow out early, it's going to be disappointing, but I still would be proud of this team and what they've shown up to this point. But we'll see. They definitely have the ability to potentially win this. So those are my pick'ems and predictions. Let me know in the comment section down below what your pick'ems and predictions are. Who do you think is going to win? Do you agree with my bracket? Do you think I'm a stupid idiot? Please click like if you enjoyed this video. Thank you all very much for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye.